Hey guys, today I wanted to take some time to start telling you guys a little bit about my life. One thing that I like to say is that my story is not actually my story, it's God's story, because He is the one who's brought me through every battle and has brought me to where I'm at right now. And He deserves all the glory for that. So as you hear about my life, remember that everything that I've overcome in my life is all because of God's strength and power in my life and not my own strength or power, because I definitely don't have enough to be able to do what He's gotten me through. But I do want to start by telling you that I will be talking about some difficult topics in this video. Some of them having to do with abuse, some of them having to do with suicide, so just a trigger warning for anyone who is sensitive to that, anything like that, because I completely understand. I've been there. So just be forewarned before you really get into this video. Alright, so this video is a little bit nerve-wracking for me because even though talking about my life is not something that's super difficult for me, it's not something that I've really shared with the world or anything. Yeah, anyway, my childhood was honestly not a great one. Really, it wasn't. I grew up with an abusive father. It started with a lot of physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. He was very manipulative, and he knew how to make it look from the outside like we were an amazing family, while at home making our lives terrible. To people on the outside, we looked like a normal church family. We went to church every day that the doors were open, basically. We were well-behaved kids. We knew how to act in front of people. And we almost always had smiles on our faces when we went out. Even at a very young age, we knew what it was like to fake a smile. That's something that we grew up with. We grew up doing that. But when we were at home, it was nothing like that. So life was full of fear. Almost every moment of every day that we were around our father, especially at home, was just full of fear. It was just a normal way of life at that point in time. We walked on eggshells pretty much any time we were around our father, just having to be very careful about everything that we did or said, not knowing what would trigger him. Life was also full of voices and lies, telling us that we were nothing. In the future, I'll probably talk about my voices a lot, and those voices are the voices that I heard as a child that have stuck with me throughout that whole time, that are always just lies and lies and lies being poured out on top of me. So the lies and telling us that we were nothing was what we heard from our father all the time. Telling us that we were worthless, that we didn't have any value, and those lies were spoken over us at a very young age, and it continued for years. And because of that, those lies have stuck in my head. Those voices, they've stuck there. They've been hounding me and bringing me to a place of self-hatred for a very, very long time. So long that at times it's hard to separate the truth from the lies. Physically, my father would use beatings as a form of punishment. His anger was out of control at times, and it was almost always taken out on us kids, from slapping us to grabbing our arms until we bruised, throwing us across the room by our hair, beating us with a belt until we bruised and bled and more. You know, the physical abuse led us to a place of even more fear. Lies became normal for us because if we got in trouble, we knew what was coming, even for just the little small insignificant things that really didn't matter. We knew that if we didn't lie about it, if we didn't say that nothing happened, we knew that abuse was coming. So lying became a very normal part of our lives. Eventually, just abusing us in those ways was not enough for him. So when I was in 5th grade, I got really super sick. I was in the hospital for a little bit and then ended up having to homeschool half days because physically I couldn't handle going to school all day. And so my dad didn't work, so he was the one who stayed home with me. Now, during that time, my father molested me. And as a 10-year-old girl who was maybe like 60, 70 pounds soaking wet up against her father, who was 300-400 pounds or so, I could do absolutely nothing to stop it from happening. I didn't really know what to do at that point in time, but what I did know is after that, my father started showing me affection for pretty much the first time in my life. There are very few moments that I can actually remember him showing me that he loved me in any way, and most of them came after he molested me. So, and you know, that was the one thing that I'd wanted so badly for my entire life. I wanted my father to love me, and it started happening after that. So that really messed with my idea of what love was. It made me believe that love could only be earned by giving people what they wanted. And it didn't help that I had another person sexually abusing me during that time, from the time I was in 3rd grade until I finished 5th grade. And so my idea of love was so skewed because of that, because these people that I should have been able to trust showed me love by saying, we want your body, and if you give that to us, then we will love you. So the summer after my 5th grade year, I told someone about my father. He went to jail, and we had no contact with him. This was court-ordered, absolutely no contact until we turned 18. And at that point, it was our decision whether we actually contacted him or not. My mom became a single mom. We became children without a father. And we learned to cope, and we learned to protect ourselves from threats, even if what we perceived as a threat actually wasn't one. We learned defense mechanisms. Those defense mechanisms that we did learn even as children, we kept using them because we wanted to protect ourselves from potential threats. My life became one full of depression and fear and self-hatred. All of that still filled my life. And on top of that, I started dealing with intense pain, physical pain, extreme fatigue, and constantly being sick, which eventually led to diagnoses of fibromyalgia and arthritis. All of this led me to wanting nothing to do with life. I couldn't see why life was worth living when I dealt with so much crap, when I felt pain every day, when I felt so alone. I'd closed myself off, building all these walls, these fortresses around myself that I thought were protecting me, when in reality, they were just bringing me to a place of so much loneliness, to the point of feeling like I had absolutely nobody who loved me, even though there were people who cared about me so much who were surrounding me. But I had to protect myself. So by the time I was in 9th grade, I hit rock bottom. My depression got to a point where I was suicidal most of the time. I didn't want to live the life that I was living. I couldn't handle my life anymore. I was done with trying. I was done with everything. So I took a bottle of my prescription pain medicine, a full bottle. I took it to school with me and went into the bathroom during 4th period. I will never forget this moment. And I was ready. I was ready to go. I couldn't couldn't do it. But then I realized that those pills were gone. Just disappeared out of thin air, just gone. And at that moment, I remember just collapsing in tears on that bathroom floor. I was partially relieved, but I was partially so upset that my plan could not go through. But as I sat there and I cried, I realized that I was being given a second chance. I could change the way that I'd been living my life. I could actually live rather than walking through my days in a constant state of self-hatred and self-pity and fear. And I could live realizing that I had people in my life who loved me and wanted to be there for me. I could live realizing that I had a God who would take care of me if I just let down my guard and let him into my life. And from that point on, I actually started fighting. I started fighting to live well. It was a huge struggle. I still dealt with depression. I dealt with so many doubts. I struggled with opening up to my friends when I was hurting or depressed. But I was finally willing to fight. And as I finally found that will to fight, God gave me the strength I needed to push on, even in the hardest moments. Sometimes that was a supernatural, emotional, spiritual, and mental strength that kept me going. And that there's absolutely no way that that could have come from me with the way that I was emotionally so broken at that point. Sometimes it was through the people that he put into my life. Shout out to my incredible high school friends and teachers who were there for me even in my hardest and most self-centered moments. People like Elise and Megan and Elizabeth and Noelle. And then, of course, my teachers, Herr Wright and his wife Melody, and Mrs. Bear and Miss Kay. You guys were all so supportive of me during that time, and I appreciate it more than you will ever know. And I truly believe that you guys were all godsends in my life. Sometimes it was through moments in youth group or church where he would speak to me. Sometimes it was through church camp and the growth that happened there. He worked in my life in so many ways, I can't even begin to explain all of them. But I'd like to fast forward to college now. I had grown in so many ways. I had become so much better. I was finally at a place where fear wasn't quite as much on the forefront of my mind all the time, and I could finally see that God had a plan for my life, but depression was still a struggle, and every day I had to push to not spiral down to my lowest place. During my time in college, I found great friends, and I felt God move in my life in so many incredible ways. But in the background of that was still the hurt and the fear and the depression. I held on to my past like a security blanket. It was my safe place. It was the one place I knew that I could go, and I knew that it would always be there. It was such an unhealthy time and place in my life that I was living in, even though it wasn't so unhealthy outright, where you could just see it just by looking at me like it was in high school. It was still a very unhealthy place. And then eventually I got to a place where my depression came back full force. I spiraled to my low place again, which is a terrifying place to be. I was having suicidal thoughts, although thankfully I had enough fight in me to fight against those thoughts and not put them into action. I struggled to do my work. I didn't feel like I had a reason for life. And it was at that point that I finally decided to start taking meds for a while to help push me out of that rut. And I finally decided that I couldn't fight it on my own. I needed help. And let me tell you guys, if you deal with depression or anxiety, you don't have to fight it alone. Really, there's no shame at all in admitting that you need help, and there's no shame in asking for help at all. Never, ever let others or yourself tell yourself that there is shame in that, or in getting therapy. Therapy is so huge, you guys. If you're dealing with depression or anxiety, I encourage you to get therapy because it's such a huge help. But never let yourself or others tell you the lie that it's not okay to get help, because that's not true. But once I got into the medicine, I was able to learn how to push through that depression and how to see the triggers before they happened. So I was able to prepare for them. I was able to tell people when I dealt with depression. Shout out to the wonderful Teak Squad, Tanya, Ellie, Ilana. You guys helped me out in those moments, especially Tanya, who forced me to push through them and forced me to get out. So thank you guys so much. So I was also able to finally reach out to God for help. I realized, again, that I could not make it without Him and His strength bringing me through it. So at the beginning of my junior year of college, I went to something called Wellsprings, which is where you go through a prayer session, typically lasting about 3 hours, and they pray over you, they speak the truth that God is revealing over you, they help you to heal and understand what God is speaking into your life. So I went into 2 sessions, and my life was completely changed after that. I finally decided to listen to the truth that God had been trying to get me to hear for so many years. I finally decided that He was enough for me. I finally understood that He loved me more than I could ever understand. I finally decided that I would never stop fighting, and I would ask God for help instead of trying to fight a war all by myself. I started to truly heal more than I ever had before in my life. I started to be able to look back at my past and realize that it didn't define me. I started to realize that my identity was not found in being an abuse victim. It was not found in being the sick girl, or being fatherless, or being depressed, or being someone with PTSD. My identity came from Christ, and I finally started to realize that my worth did not come from other people and what they thought about me, or what they saw, or how they treated me, but it came from the way that God saw me, the way that He treated me, the way that He viewed me, and He viewed me as His child, a child of a king, and He delights in me. He rejoices over me. He doesn't see me for my sins or my past or my hurts. He sees me as His beloved. I started breaking down some of those walls that I'd used for protection, but that had kept me from growing into the person that God had created me to be. I started opening up to more people. I started truly living. Fear still controlled my life in some ways, so I lived life more fully than I had before, but I still allowed fear to control my decisions. When something became uncomfortable or difficult, I ran away, sometimes physically leaving, sometimes giving up, sometimes just completely shutting down emotionally. And I didn't fight through the fear. Honestly, that fear controlled me up until about 6 weeks ago, when I decided to start letting God get rid of the fear, and I decided to push through it and fight it rather than giving up when it got hard. And let me tell you, God has done so much in my life since then. I just have to tell you guys that I'm not even close to being the same person that I was in that bathroom in 9th grade. God has brought me so far, and if you could have seen me then and the change that has happened since then, you would be able to see that I am so different, so much healthier. I can find joy in the midst of hardship now. I can fight the depression and the fear now. I can open up to people. I understand that love is not based on giving what shouldn't be given. I can stay in the middle of the hard and uncomfortable times and see God working in the midst of those moments. Another shout out, this time to the Wilkinson family, especially Tina, and the way that you guys have been willing to let me learn and grow and be a part of your family. I love you guys so much. But seriously, guys, there is no way that I would be here if it weren't for God's protection and for God leading me through the dark years of my life. There's no way that I would be a fighter if it weren't for God giving me strength and courage that it takes to step forward in the midst of pain and depression and fear. I can't tell you any part of my story without telling you that God was the one who was in it every single moment. He was the one who gave me what I needed to get through it. He was the one who showed me that I wasn't alone, and he was the one who healed me physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And that it's still a struggle sometimes. I still have to fight so hard. But the difference is that I have God on my side. The difference is I'm at a place where I can ask for help. I can open up to people and tell them what I'm struggling with. The difference is I refuse to give up on living. The difference is I have God. If you're struggling with depression or fear or self-hatred or just getting through each moment, seriously, let me tell you guys, you can get through it. And I can tell you that because I've been through it. I'm at such a healthier place than I've ever been. And all of that is because I've allowed God to work in my life, because I asked for help, because I pushed through the fear of letting someone else help me. It is possible to get to the other side. I have been through the center of the struggle, but I've made it to the other side, you guys. You are not alone. You're not the only person going through this. There are other people there. Reach out to them, you guys. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to be. You can choose to reach out and push through that fear and that anxiety and the thought that they don't want to listen to you because it's not true. And your past does not define you, and neither does your fear, neither do your failures, neither do your hurts, your depression, your anxiety, your problems. None of that defines you. What defines you is your identity in Christ. You don't have to live trapped in your past anymore. You don't have to do it. Let God free you. Let God break those chains of depression and anxiety and those chains of being a victim, those chains of your past, the chains of the hurt, those chains that have kept you from moving forward. Let him break down the walls that you have built that have kept you from becoming the person that he created you to be. Live the life that he created you to live. Be the you that he created you to be. Guys, it's possible. I can tell you that because I've been through it. And I'm still going through it, guys. But it's so much easier because I'm living as God's daughter. I'm living as someone who's willing to ask for help, as someone who's willing to push through the hard times, because God's there by my side and I know it. Rely on God, lean on him. Let him bring you through the hurt and the pain. Let him heal you and let him make you the you that he created you to be.